In this video, I'm going to share some RV safety tips to help keep you safe in your RV. Please be sure to verify the information to make sure it's accurate and up to date. Fire extinguishers are very important to have in your RV. Unfortunately, most people know very little about fire extinguishers and maybe don't even know how to use them. So in the event of a fire, it might be too late to try to get a crash course in using them. So the first thing I want to go over with respect to the fire extinguisher is it adequate for your intended purpose? Putting out a fire in, say, your RV kitchen. And that's what most of these little RV fire extinguishers are rated for. This particular one is a class 5BC, or has a rating of 5BC, which means that it is a class Bravo and class Charlie fire extinguisher, or BC, which means that it will, in class B, handle oil, paint, gasoline, propane type fires, and in class C, electrical, like appliances and motors and things like that. So the other thing about the rating that's important to know is how many square feet of this type of fire will it handle. These are typically 5 square feet of class Bravo and class Charlie fires. Now, I've upgraded, or I have an additional fire extinguisher to go on to cover class A, or class Alpha fires, which are wood and paper type fires. So if your trash can's on fire, that type of thing, maybe some like a carpet or a blanket or something of that nature. So depending on the type of material. This particular one happens to be a 1-A10-BC, which means it'll put out 1 square foot of a class Alpha, or wood paper fire, and 10 square feet of a class B or C, Bravo or Charlie fire, oil or electrical, for example. So it's very important to know that you have a fire extinguisher that's going to handle the potential fires that you could encounter. The next thing that's very important is how to use the fire extinguisher. Many people look at these things all the time, maybe just kind of at a glance as they go in and out of their door, and they're very unfamiliar with how to use these. They're actually very easy to use. I would recommend that you practice with these. If you have a spare one that you could actually use, then go ahead and do that in an appropriate area. But if you don't, then you can just pretend to do it. You're basically pulling the pin. You're aiming it at the base of the fire. It's important to aim it at the base of the fire to push the fire back away from you rather than down on top of it to spread it out. And you're going to, after pulling the pin and aiming at the base of the fire, you're going to go ahead and either pull the lever, squeeze the lever, or push the button. And it will discharge, and there's not a whole lot in these things, so you want to make sure that you're definitely aiming at the base of the fire when you release it. And that's pretty much it. A lot of times you'll go in a slow sweeping motion depending on the nature of the fire, but you're going to want to consult the instructions of the respective manufacturer of the fire extinguisher. But anyway, the thing to do is to make sure it's in a place that you can get to it in the event of an emergency. I like to keep one of them mounted where the manufacturer decided it was a good place, and that's right near the front door of the RV. That's quite handy in my opinion. And the other one I actually keep near our bedroom, so that if something happens in the middle of the night, that I can grab this on my way out. And typically the thing you're going to want to do, obviously, is have somebody call emergency services so that you can get fire and any other services on the way. And if it looks like it's a big fire, don't even try with one of these. Get out, get to safety. If it's something small and it looks like you can do as intended with these type of fire extinguishers, then by all means try to save your property. Another thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that these are kept clean. You want to make sure that the seals aren't leaking. That's easier to find out on ones that have the gauges. You'll see a loss in pressure, which will be indicated. It won't say full anymore, it'll say discharged, whatever. But you want to take these in. I think some fire departments will actually look them over for you, or you'll have to go to some fire inspection service company in your area. If you discharge these at all, meaning you use them on a fire or they accidentally get discharged or whatever, then you're going to need to replace these or have them refilled if it's the appropriate to do so. So anyway, keep them in a good location that you can get to them, know how to use them, and keep them up to date and in good condition. Smoke alarms are another area of importance when it comes to RV safety. There's essentially two types of smoke alarms: ionization, and these are better at detecting small particles from hot and flaming fires. And there's also photoelectric smoke alarms, and these are better at detecting larger particles from like smoldering fires. Now you can get these in a dual sensor smoke alarm, and these are good to have because they'll detect both of those types of fires. I'll put a link in the description to some possible units that are available. One of the big things about smoke alarms is that they're out of sight and out of mind for a lot of people, unless they burn something on the stove or some toast in the toaster and set them off. They're not likely to be thinking about them that often. So I'm going to offer some suggestions. I suggest that you periodically test the smoke alarms to make sure that they're in good operating condition. There should be a test button located on them that you can push, and to also change the batteries very regularly, at least once a year, if not sooner. And the unit itself should be replaced probably at least every 10 years or whatever the manufacturer recommends. And that's if it needs it or not. I just wouldn't take any chance with something like that. Now there are some units now that they're making that can actually hold a 10-year battery in them. The battery is supposed to last about 10 years. I've had these, but I went ahead and changed the batteries in 1 year anyway. I like to put this information on my calendar, and I also mark the batteries with the date that I put them in so that I'll know when it's time to change them. But it's very important that you maintain the smoke alarms and that they're put in the proper location. Most RVs are going to come with them already installed in what is the best location. And if not, if you're installing them yourself, then you're going to have to consult with the manufacturer to make sure they're being put in the proper place. So be sure to add the smoke alarms to your safety checklist when you're doing maintenance on your RV to make sure that they're up to date and working properly and that they have a good battery in them. Carbon monoxide alarms are also a great thing to have in your RV. Chances are there was one installed when it was manufactured or sold, and I like to have an additional one that I have in the bedroom or adjacent to the bedroom, as well as the one that's been pre-installed in the kitchen. And carbon monoxide is the leading cause of accidental poisoning in the USA. It's basically odorless, tasteless, and invisible. So it's impossible to detect it without these detectors. So it's very important that you keep these up to date and that they're working properly and that you push the button to test them on a regular basis and that you have them installed properly according to the manufacturer's specifications. Something important to note about carbon monoxide is that it's not necessarily heavier than air, as people say. It can be distributed evenly throughout the air, so you don't want to just have these down near the floor, as some people have indicated, because carbon monoxide can indeed be distributed throughout the air. So it's important to have your smoke alarms and your carbon monoxide alarms strategically placed in your RV and up to date and in good working condition for your safety. Propane tanks contain LP gas, or liquid propane gas. This is under high pressure and it's reduced by a regulator and distributed in low pressure to your appliances. It's very important that you maintain this system, the hoses, the connections, the tanks, and the regulator, to make sure that they're working properly. Now, when I go to get the tanks refilled, I like to look them over to make sure there's no dents or any types of anomalies, And when I get it filled and put it back in, I check to make sure that there's no leaks. You can do this with a do-it-yourself solution of dishwashing liquid and water, or some people prefer to use a commercially available leak detection product that I can link to in the description. Now, the importance of checking these tanks is obvious. For your safety in your RV, you want to make sure that the gas isn't leaking into the RV, or that you don't have some type of fire as a result of these leaks. So it's important that you look them over, you keep them maintained. Hopefully when you're getting them filled, that the people that are filling them are also looking over the tanks to make sure that there's no problems with them. Another thing that you're going to want to do is on the regulator, there's a vent at the bottom of it. I like to keep this regulator vent clear of any type of obstruction or dust or particles or any of that. So I'll usually take a little brush of some sort to it and make sure that that stays clean. Another thing that's very important is to keep the propane tanks in their proper outside compartments. I don't recommend that you keep RV in your or LP gas in your RV living space or in your vehicle. It's important that you keep this in the proper location. If there is a leak, you're not going to want that in your living space. So it's important to keep that out there. And as well as keeping it in the proper compartment, do not lock the compartment. If somebody needs to get to that in the event of an emergency to shut it off, they're not going to be able to try to go find a key at that time. So it's important that you keep them unlocked. If you're really concerned about someone stealing the propane tanks or something of that nature, you can put a cable on the tank itself and go ahead and lock it to your chassis. But it's very important that you inspect these periodically to make sure everything's in good working condition and that there are no leaks for your safety in your RV. Properly maintaining your RV sewer system might not seem like an RV safety tip, but if you have a leak, it could pose a public health risk. Now, what I like to do to maintain my system is to make sure that every single time that I empty my tanks, that I walk the length of the hose and check for any leaks in the fittings or in the hose itself. Now, keeping my hose up on a stand will also help protect the hose from any kind of holes that could be made from debris that's on the ground, keeps it from freezing to the ground in cold weather. It's just a good idea, and in a lot of places it's actually mandatory to have your sewer hose off the ground. So another thing that I'll do is I'll add a secondary valve at the wastewater outlet on the RV. This is actually a safety valve for me. If one of the other valves fails or doesn't work properly, or I accidentally leave it partially or fully open, then I know that when I open that cap on the outlet that I'm not going to get any surprises. I have that secondary valve that's going to catch any debris there that might be in the system. Last but not least, it's important to keep your drinking water safe, and you can do this in a couple different ways. It's good to periodically disinfect your freshwater tank to keep any bacteria from growing in there, and also to use a secondary drinking water filter. Don't rely on the filters that are commonly used on the freshwater hose. These tend to be about 100 micron, and bacteria can actually be 1 to 5 microns, so very small. So it's important to keep your tank disinfected and to have a secondary filter for your drinking water. These were just a few basic RV safety tips. Hopefully there's something that you can put to use to keep you safe in your RV. Please remember to comment, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Another safety tip is to make sure that you practice getting out of your emergency exits. Can you get in? You're slowly shrinking in. Well, we all know what's going to happen to you in the event of an emergency.
Exactly.